All right, you're watching Live Now. I'm Austin Westfall, a live look at the White House on this Wednesday evening, the time 10:09 in the nation's capital. Lots to cover today. There are tons of important economy-related headlines to discuss today, from the Fed to this week's jobs report to the government shutdown. Let's do a roundup of it all with Jeffrey Roach. He's here. He's the chief economist at LPL Financial. Always good to have you guys on. Let's get into the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The BLS has been in the news a lot in recent months. The BLS released their monthly jobs report. They usually release their monthly job reports on the first Friday of every month, Jeffrey. That means there would have been one in 2 days, but the government shutdown is going to axe that for now. What were we looking to learn from this week's report, Jeffrey?
Well, you're exactly right that we are not going to be able to enjoy what we normally do. The first Friday of the month, 8:30 Eastern, BLS releases the monthly report. We were definitely looking to that report for a number of things. Wanted to watch how unemployment rate was moving. It did seem like it was trending upward. We would expect an upward move in that unemployment rate. Also looking at some of the weaker sectors that we're starting to see a little bit more weakness in leisure, hospitality, retail, trade, construction. Now, here's an important point. We do have private sector data that allows us to get some insights on what's happening in the economy. Now, granted, it's not the official numbers, but investors can certainly focus on some of the data that we get from the private sector. And indeed, we got data this morning from ADP suggesting a continued deceleration. Now, just a quick, what does it all mean kind of comment? Well, the markets certainly did not get worried about the shutdown today. Markets were up domestically here. Just looking at my screens here on Asia, markets were looking pretty good overseas. And the reason that is despite a shutdown, despite the fact that we do not have access to the latest BLS jobs report, we have a pretty good notion that the Fed is indeed going to cut rates another 25 basis points at the end of this month, October, as well as another 25 basis point cut in December after that quarter point reduction they did in September last month.
So without the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we still pretty much have a fairly good litmus test of how the jobs are looking in the country?
We're not necessarily flying blind. It's interesting seeing some of the chatter across Wall Street and around the world on other investors and Fed watchers and such. We're not flying blind. Granted, it's not the official numbers that really do move markets, but we do have a good handle on certain things in the economy.
So let's talk about E.J. Antoni. President Trump, I'm sure you've heard by now, pulled the nomination for his head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He withdrew Antoni's name. We learned about this yesterday. News outlets began reporting on it. I will say, though, that this move has not yet been officially announced publicly, but let's still talk about this. How important is the head of the BLS? Does whoever fills that role have an impact on the data that's released?
Well, these commissioners serve at the pleasure of the president. In fact, I was recently talking to some of our clients about this, and certainly a few weeks ago when it made the news when the previous commissioner was fired. And because of that phrase, serving at the pleasure of the president, that's the official phrase, the president does have indeed the ability and the power to replace, to get rid of a commissioner for cause with no cause. Now, they're somewhat figureheads. So I think what's key here is you want to put someone in this position that, yes, is loyal to whoever's in the White House, but also someone who's committed to the veracity of the data that's coming out of that entity. And I've personally walked the halls of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I know the safeguards that they do within the divisions, and I think it's important for investors, it's important for policymakers, it's important for the general public to know that these numbers are indeed done with utmost care, and we can have a certain level of trust in the numbers that are published.
We're looking at some video of E.J. Antoni, and I do have to amend something I said. The White House has acknowledged that they are not going to be moving forward with E.J. Antoni to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Here's what Caroline Levitt had to say about this earlier today when she was asked about it at the White House press briefing.
Caroline, I have one for you on E.J. Antoni and one on the shutdown.
Sure.
CNN reported that Collins and Murkowski declined to meet with E.J. Antoni, raising concerns that his nomination was in trouble. I'm wondering what message Collins and Murkowski are sending to the White House by not meeting with one of the president's nominees.
Well, look, E.J. Antoni remains a great ally of the president and our team. It became clear, unfortunately, that he was not going to have the votes, and so we will be announcing a replacement nominee very soon.
So we have since heard we've gotten in a statement from Antoni himself. It's a bit long here. I'm going to read the first paragraph. Americans voted to reform the failed status quo of the D.C. swamp, demanding government reform, transparency, and efficiency. And most of all, they voted for a revitalized economy after years of wasteful spending, inflation, and general mismanagement. Those changes are not possible without accurate economic data consistently delivered in a timely manner, something for which I have advocated for years, well before President Trump asked me to lead the BLS. I got to ask you, Jeffrey, what typically makes for a good head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Well, I think what makes a good head there for the BLS is a person who's committed to the overall mission of the BLS, and that is to give investors, policymakers, the best estimate of what's happening in the economy. BLS covers a lot of different factors. So they're publishing employment data, they're publishing inflation data, they're publishing a lot of important data that truly guides the outlook for the economy. So someone who is committed to that mission. Now, granted, and this is where it gets a little bit, political. I think the person that heads this entity also has to be committed to continual improvements, always reforming, always improving, always looking for ways to do things better, but also someone who's not going to put any hint into the public that this data is manipulated.
Well, let's talk about Lisa Cook. We do know that the Supreme Court today is allowing now Lisa Cook to remain as a Federal Reserve governor for now. We see some reporting on it from Fox News. This means that the court is declining to act on the Trump administration's effort to immediately remove Cook from the central bank. The court said that it would hear arguments in January over President Trump's effort to force Cook off of the Fed board. Caroline Levitt was also asked about this earlier today, Jeffrey. Let's listen real quick.
Reagan.
And on Lisa Cook,
Sure, go ahead.
Lisa Cook,
Yeah.
the Supreme Court said today that she's going to be allowed to stay at the Federal Reserve Board until oral arguments in January. Does the president have any personal reaction to that? This has been something he's been very intent on.
Look, we have respect for the Supreme Court, but they're going to hear the actual case and make a determination on the legal argument in January. And we look forward to that because we maintain that she was fired well within the president's legal authority to do so. She was removed from the board, and we look forward to that case being fully played out at the Supreme Court.
So, Jeffrey, basically, what this means is that Cook will be able to take part in the remaining two Fed meetings in 2025, including the next meeting of its interest rate setting committee in late October. Is it clear to us whether her presence will make a difference at those meetings?
I'm not sure if it's going to make a difference. And in fact, frankly, it's interesting that the president is so focused on her specifically and trying to go after her. There are other members of the Federal Open Market Committee that I think could have a little bit more influence. And, clearly some of the other ones, of course, the chair, of course, but some of the other governors, some of the other presidents of the regional banks. So really, it's probably it's a little bit baffling that there's such a focus on Miss Cook. Now, I will say the biggest concern for me as a Fed watcher and investors around the globe looking at the influence that the White House has on moving and influencing who is staying on as board of governors, who's not, does add a little bit of fuel to the fire on Fed independence. Now, granted, in some ways, there's always going to be some influence of politics. And in fact, you've seen that for several Fed chairs. Greenspan would talk a lot about how there was a lot of pressure from the White House to do a certain thing and make interest rates move a certain way if he could get his way. And so it's nothing new that the White House is trying to coerce the Fed chair to make a decision. It's Greenspan, Bernanke, Yellen, now Powell. Now, granted, what is unique this time around, Greenspan did not have to worry about social media back in the day.
We, of course, always appreciate your insight. My next question was going to be why Trump is targeting Cook specifically. If you care to expand more on that, help us, remind us really. There are 7 governors. Give us some more clarity. Why Cook?
Well, Cook apparently said that she was taking out some mortgages for a house that wasn't necessarily her primary residence. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. And as was mentioned in the press secretary today, the president's going to have his day in court and make that case. If he makes his case convincingly, the Supreme Court will rule in his favor. And that is going to be one reason for cause can be triggered, and so the president can remove Cook. What this does, of course, is it allows the president to appoint a new governor, someone that might be more favorable, more loyal to his views and interests. So remember, it's a little bit complicated, but the Federal Open Market Committee, the rate setting committee, is made up of a combination of 2 entities, a combination of members of the Board of Governors. Those Board of Governors are appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate. The Open Market Committee is also made up of a rotating cycle of district presidents. So we have 12 district banks in the United States, and there's always a rotating cycle among those. A little bit less pressure and connectedness from the White House on the district presidents. District presidents are put forth by a third-party search committee, and then the boards of the individual district banks actually hire those presidents. But the president is probably focusing on Cook because this is one seat that he could fill with his own nomination if it's confirmed by the Senate.
Jeffrey Roach is the chief economist at LPL Financial. Always good to see you. Thanks.
Thanks so much.